Please welcome to the stage Matthew Swift, co-founder, president, and CEO, Concordia, and Ann Arnall, president, Arnall Family Foundation.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce Ann Arnall, our newest board member here at Concordia, and also a fantastic supporter, especially in the launch of Concordia's campaign series. So we're going to have a conversation a little bit today on sort of the state of philanthropy and a lot of the things that, the great things that the Arnall Family Foundation are doing. So, Ann, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience over the last day and a half, especially the strategic dialogue on a sustainable and ethical food supply chain?
That was an incredible experience. I couldn't believe how much thought had gone into preparing for it. The range of participants, we had nonprofits, for-profits, hybrid, for-profit with the social mission groups. We had Monsanto, Hershey, Nestle, and then some of the major animal welfare organizations in the country, all together looking at how we could work together to advance sustainable, humane food supply. I think we need to, it was really difficult for everybody to say our little humane, sustainable food supply.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We'll have to get some other.
And this is a new angle for this, right? I mean, it's not oftentimes that you are merging animal welfare folks with food companies in this kind of environment, especially talking about public-private partnerships.
And also with chemical companies, because we were talking to companies that are the major producers of fertilizer, pesticides, but we can all work together for food supply in the future that doesn't harm the planet, that is healthy for people, that and we kept GMOs out of the discussion because that really doesn't help us advance the humane, sustainable position that we're working towards.
So let's talk a little bit about your foundation. You have just recently started it.
Yes.
You have signed the Giving Pledge. We're going to be hearing from Warren Buffett in a little bit, and he's going to be talking about the Giving Pledge. Talk to us a little bit about that. Why have you done it? What does the Giving Pledge mean to you?
Okay. A friend of mine, George Kaiser, when he found out that my daughters had released me from leaving them a large inheritance. Sorry, Jane and Hillary, I took you at your word. But when he heard about that, then he asked me to join the Giving Pledge. And I've committed 75% of my wealth to philanthropy. And at the beginning, I really didn't understand what that meant. And I've been going to a lot of sessions. I didn't understand how to fully utilize it. I'd always wondered why these people who made tremendous amounts of money were tremendously successful in business, why they would just write checks, why they didn't actually give their time also to trying to advance the cause that they believed in, a social cause. And so I wanted to do that also. I wanted to not just write checks, I wanted to do it thoughtfully. I wanted to help something that I believed in, children at risk and animal welfare. And so I joined the Giving Pledge because I have a lot of educational help in this. They have classes, sessions. We get access to some of the leading philanthropists in the world. I got advice from Melinda and Bill Gates. And their advice was that when you do find a cause, don't string out the help, because otherwise it's like whack-a-mole. You know, you hit one problem and then another one pops up. Get them all at once. And so I took that to heart, and then Warren Buffett said, fill a gap. Look for something that's not being addressed, or if it is being addressed, is it being addressed in a way that you think is going to help it? And so I took that to heart too. So I got advice from two of the best business people in the world. And, that's one of the reasons I joined the Giving Pledge, to have access to that.
So how do you go about thinking of what it is that you care about? How do you come to a conclusion with your foundation? How do you determine what are the issues you want to focus on most? And then how is it that you go about then determining within that issue how you fill the gap, as he said?
Matt, I care about everything. It was harder than anything. It really was difficult to focus. We went through a strategic planning session. I have an incredible person who helps me with the foundation. She's the president of the animal welfare portion, Christy Counts.
Yeah.
And she's all about protocol, all about using best practices. So we hired a really good group to help us with the strategic plan. We went through this for 6 months to focus. And then as I stray, Christy says, Sue-Ann, read the strategic plan. We're not going to go help this organization or that one because they don't help us further our cause. And again, it's going back to that whack-a-mole. If you're spread everywhere, you can't accomplish anything.
So as you said, you do have a wide array of interests and passions and issues that you care about. What are some of the things that keep you up at night?
Whatever I've worked on last, frankly. I'm from Oklahoma, and we're at the top of all the lists you don't want to be at the top of, and we're at the bottom of all the lists that you want to be at the top of. And I've decided that I needed to stay in Oklahoma to help them, because if everybody who has the means leaves, then that's not fair to the people who aren't able to, and Oklahoma's helped me a lot. So I decided to stay in Oklahoma and help the kids we've taken on as our own, the foster kids. In Oklahoma, we're at the top of taking the kids out of their families because we seem to believe our state's better at raising them than their families. So we're addressing that.
Yeah.
And we're working with the DHS, Department of Human Services, who really do want to change their culture also and stop taking kids out for situational neglect. Situational neglect means a parent can't pay the electric bill or something like that. That we shouldn't be taking them out. We should help the family so that they can have a home for their child, because if the child's taken out of the family, the outcome is horrible, no matter what. Even if he goes to the best foster family, the percentage chance that he's going to end up homeless, on drugs, raising a foster child of his own, in trouble with the law, incarcerated. So helping the families so that they can keep their children, and then if they do have to be taken out, working with the families so that they can get the child back so that they can become healthy, and then working with the foster families, providing a network for them so that the kids don't bounce around to different foster families, so that they have a stable home. So that's the area we're working on in Oklahoma.
You said that Oklahoma's on the bottom of the list of all the lists that you want to be at the top of. Why is that?
I could tell you what I think, which would not be socially acceptable. Our legislature is a big reason, frankly. And
so it shows how important good governance is in general, right? I mean, if you don't have the basics of good governance, that's the ball game, right?
Yeah.
But with that in mind, then, being here at Concordia, talking a lot about the role and power that public-private partnerships can have in addressing major issues. Obviously, you need the public sector in your efforts, right?
Yes.
So what do you need from governments with specifically the things that the Arnall Family Foundation is focused on?
We need governments to help incentivize for-profits in a way that makes the playing field level for them. Most for-profit companies want social impact also, but they have to answer to the bottom line, and they can't get out of competition with their peers. They can't be the ones helping that local economy and then spend some of the money in their funds towards the building up the community when their peers are putting it all into, for example, drilling more wells. Then their results will look better, their stock price will go up for the other companies, and the companies looking at the community, well, you understand what I mean. So we need government to help level that field so that all companies do have to have a certain amount of social responsibility. And as I said, I believe most of them do. They're made up of people like you and me, and we have the millennials now who believe in social impact. They believe in a cause with their work. They can't just work for money anymore. They work for their quality of life for themselves and others, is what I believe.
Can we talk a little bit? A lot of people might not know this about you, but you spent a long time in the oil business.
Yes.
In an industry that there were not a lot of female leaders, right?
Right.
And so talk a little bit about the oil business in general and kind of this, what's happening. I mean, obviously we all know oil prices are low. We've been talking a lot about Venezuela in particular. We had the Energy Strategic Dialogue this morning where we talked about a Pan-American Energy Alliance. What's next in the oil business?
You want me to start last or first?
Yeah.
The oil business is still a man's world. When I joined it, I had just graduated from law school, and when I went to law school, there were only 10% women. So even in the law at that point, it was a man's world, although it was rapidly, I think within 10 years, 15 years, it was 50% women, but
Yeah.
when I went 10%. In the oil industry, the only women, they had typewriters in their offices. All I asked with my first job, just don't put that typewriter in my office. I do not want to type anymore. And of course, then we get computers, so we all type. But it was run by large men because 30 years ago, 35 years ago, okay, it was 40 years ago, but 40 years ago, 40 years ago, the oil companies were still in their infancy as far as being in the offices. The men running it, the presidents, the CFOs, they had all just come, they were former roughnecks. They were big men, burly men. It wasn't the most genteel place to be. And I was a small woman, soft-spoken. It was very, very difficult. But I was lucky enough to, with my law degree, I got into contracts, oil and gas contracts, sales of oil and gas. And that was also in its infancy for smaller companies. And I loved it. I loved contracts. I loved the marketing, and I took over departments and ended up actually marketing 500,000 barrels a day of oil.
Wow.
But I was able to do that by not being out in the field. They couldn't tell if I was a big woman, and a lot of it they couldn't tell if I was a woman even. And I got into trading, futures, and there again, being a woman didn't matter. I just needed to win. I needed to be right, and I was. So I was able to rise in the field because I was able to find that little area that it didn't matter if I was a man or woman. And then success breeds success. And but a lot of women didn't have that same opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I just got lucky that I found what fit me.
So we've talked about Oklahoma. Let's talk on a global scale. What keeps you up at night from a global perspective? What do you think about the most?
I try not to worry about things I can't affect, but I know I can affect a lot because I had early success in that. In the beginning, from Oklahoma, we were able to have an effect around the world in a certain areas in oil and gas. It kills me what's happening in Nigeria, and I wish I'd gotten involved 30 years ago, or gotten our industry involved 30 years ago with the oil spills that are there on the magnitude of spills there would blow everybody's mind if they knew, because they don't have regulations, environmental regulations that are enforced.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. 5-year plan, what's the goal?
To end euthanasia of healthy adoptable dogs and cats in the U.S. That's the goal.
And why is this problem so prevalent in the United States? And is it worse in the United States versus other parts of the world?
That's something else where I got off on.
Yeah.
It's worse in some areas in the world, but not really like we think. I went to Peru doing a spay-neuter program clinic because I thought all these dogs running around were homeless. It turned out they had a home. Their owners just thought that it was nicer to let them run around than be stuck in a backyard all day.
Yeah.
And so some things that appear worse aren't, and I learned to do my homework beforehand after that. It's bad in Oklahoma in rural communities. There's just not the education, so we're working on that. We're partnering with other organizations. I learned that from you. Partnering with other organizations. Don't try to take it on without getting the landscape and seeing other groups who might have the same goals or might want to get into that area. So we've partnered with a couple of really good organizations to take this on. Rural communities are the worst. They're facing their own problems, but the way we treat our animals is reflective of how we treat our children,
Yes.
our wives, our families, our parents, how we treat everyone around us. And it helps the rural communities if they don't have this problem that they don't think they can change. It raises the quality of their lives when they don't have dogs they're having to kill every week.
So, and you have a 5-year plan now to address that?
Yes, we do.
And it's nationwide?
Yes.
Okay, but starting focused in Oklahoma and then going from there?
No, we're already focused nationwide.
Focused nationwide,
Yes.
got it.
Yeah.
And what role do a lot of the big NGOs play for you in this space?
They have the staff to organize. We're doing a major transport program, and they have the staff to manage
So that's
that.
really how you deploy this?
Yes.
Okay, so through these partnerships, and what do you want from government with this? You want them to stay out of it? Do you want more legislation on this issue?
Well, yes, I want more legislation.
Yeah.
I would like help.
Yeah.
I would like for them to enforce cruelty cases, to make it easier to enforce cruelty cases with the right evidence. I would like for them to understand the link between violence against animals and violence against family members. And some do.
Yeah.
Some do.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. It's
Oh, another thing. I would
Please.
love for them to outlaw transporting horses to Canada and Mexico for slaughter too.
talk about that for a minute, because I know that we have actually here at Concordia a lot of people interested in this subject.
We were lucky to get our government to defund the Department of Ag's inspections of slaughterhouses for horses. So that effectively makes it illegal to slaughter horses in the U.S. Because they can't operate slaughterhouses in the U.S. But we have all of these horses going to Canada and New Mexico for slaughter. They call them killer trucks. They put these horses on these trailers. I don't want to paint too horrible of a picture, but it's gruesome.
Yeah.
They don't feed or water them because they're going to be slaughtered when they go, and they're not inspected by the USDA that they're not diseased or dead when they get there. And it's a horrific ending to life of our pets. I consider horses our pets. They're working animals, but they're also pets. I would love for the U.S. to make it illegal to transport horses to Canada and Mexico for slaughter.
And why is it not illegal? I mean, talk to me. I mean, I know quite a bit about this subject, of course, because of knowing you, but talk to the person who this is the first time they're hearing about this issue. Why is it important? Not just with horses, but with companion animals in general. Why is it important?
It's important to those horses. It's important to those dogs and cats, but it's also important to everyone watching. We have to turn a jaded eye when we know this.
Yeah.
And
It's important for society.
it's important, exactly.
Yeah.
We become jaded when we let incidents like these go unnoticed. It's not good for our society, I don't believe.
Let's go back to the campaign.
Yes.
Sustainable and ethical food supply chain. There seems to be a trend going on today, right? People care about where their food is sourced. They care about where things come from that can be consumed. But a lot of times consumers can't necessarily afford those products that come from the most ethical place, right? So how is it that we change the perspective of business? How do we impact that?
Actually, that's not totally accurate that people can't afford it. There was the belief and myth that by requiring cage-free or battery-free fryers, chickens, that would raise the price of eggs in California. It didn't. The prices in Oklahoma, they say, oh, if we pass that law in Oklahoma, our price for eggs would be $5 like it is in California. It's not like that in California. It's $1 something.
Yeah.
It's not raised the price. When everyone has to do it, then the economies of scale kick in, and it's no more no more different. And then we also have these costs that we don't know at the time, but we have incredible health costs in Oklahoma because we have poor health choices for food. And those are costs the state has to pay. Somebody's going to pay it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your question?
No, how do you entice the private sector in this? How do you get their attention to this? You sat with, we have the CEOs of Cargill and Danone later today. Danone being an amazing example of a company out there doing good. If you don't have these folks at the table, right, you can't advance the issue.
No, but we have to make the regulations so that they're not having to compete against other companies who aren't doing what they want to be doing and what they know is best for long-term sustainable health and sustainable food supply. These companies already want to do the right thing, and they are, and they're making it work, but we need regulations from the government. We need the government to help level the playing field for these companies.
Yeah, that's your message to governments today, is level the playing field for NGOs, for private sector, right?
Yes, and consider long-term, not short-term. The government's not on it every quarter. They've got to meet a call with their stockholders where they have to explain why their stock price went up or not. Government can have a long-term focus, and they should, and they're able to place that long-term focus on corporations through some of these regulations. I don't like being over-regulated either. Nobody likes to be over-regulated. But for the long-term health of our population, we need some of these regulations so that the companies can operate within guidelines that they already want to.
There are a lot of parallels between your experience in the energy space and then this issue.
Yes.
A lot of parallels to the industries as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's an honor to have you here today. It's great to hear some of your thoughts and a lot of the big and ambitious plans that you have with the Arnall Family Foundation. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Matt. Okay.